Well, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Razil Fauzan. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I would like to present about 20th century of literature, and I will explain about the definition, characteristic about the era, and then characteristic about the literature, and also the example of the literature, and uh, more. I will explain to you what I get from this history of English literature. Well, the first I would like to explain to you about the definition. What is it, the 20th century's literature? So, literature of the 20th century refers to what literature produced during the 20th century in 1901 to uh, 2000, the period we are most familiar with the term of our personal experience, the one closest to us in time. It also a period that saw immense change in the society and then in the literature. It was a period that was marked by two world wars, by a great worldwide economic depression, by the dissolution of the British Empire, by increasing democratization of society, and by the advent of new technologies. The literature of the century is just a period at the turn of the century. The Georgians and the Dissent or aesthetic movement were two terms of poetry that derived from the were in just World War One, shattered many assumptions about society and humanity. The poetry of the First World War and the literature that came afterward was often unsettling, destructive, and emphasized new interests and approach. So that's it about the definition in 20th century literature. Now, about the characteristic in this era, in the 20th century's era, the 20th century was a period of transitions architecturally, marking the entrance into a new era of building. This was a beginning of forward-looking architecture design, where the styles not based on the previous building forms, change in construction techniques, especially the development of skyscraper technology and the desire to create house that fit visually into the natural environment influence the developing style of this era. The first style to emerge from this architectural movement was a Sullivanesque style, named for its creator, Louis Sullivan, prominent American architect. The Sullivanesque style was developed as design for skyscrapers. Sullivan divided the skyscraper into three parts: an entry level, median, and highly ornamented top cornice. This style show the influence of Art Nouveau movement in the curvilinear lines and the complex pattern of the decorative element. Well, uh, and also characteristic in this area is about the education of Act in 1870 that makes the elementary education compulsory for people in the age 5 into 13 is the factor of the development of literary public, the rising of popular press, and the mass production of popular literature for semi-literate, lowbrow leadership, and that does at the end show the existence of rapid expansion of unsophisticated literary public at this century. Moreover, the increasing access to literary and to education in general led to profound change in the reading public, the ability to writing, the later visit reading ability in the real example of literary ability in the wartime because 1900 until 1945 is the time when the World War One happens. Well, now I would like to explain to you the characteristic about 20th century literature. The 20th century was like no time period before it. Einstein, Darwin, Fred, and Marx were just some of the thinkers who profoundly changed Western culture. This change took a distinct shape in the literature of the 20th century. Modernism, a movement that was a radical break from the 19th century's Victorianism, led to the postmodernism, which emphasized self-consciousness and pop art, while 20th century's literature is diverse field covering a variety of genres. There are common characteristics that change literature forever. So there are several characteristics about 20th century's literature. The first one is fragmented structure. Period to the 20th century's literature tended to be structured in linear, chronological order. 20th century's writer experimented with the other kinds of structure. Virginia Woolf, for instance, wrote a novel whose main plot was often interrupted by individual character memories, resulting in a disorienting experience for the reader. For Murdoch's four classics, The God Soldier, plays with the chronology, jumping back and forth between time periods. Many of these writers aimed to imitate the feeling of how time is truly experienced subjectively. And then the second one is the second types, fragmented perspective. Uh, if there one things readers could count on the before 20th century, it was a reliability of an objective narrator in fiction. Modernist and postmodern writers, however, believe that this did a disservice to the reliability of stories in general. The 20th century saw the birth of the ironic narrator who couldn't be trusted with the fact of narrative. Nick Carey, narrator of Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, for example, tells the story with a bias toward the novel's titular character. In an extreme case of the fragmented perspective, Faulkner's As I Lay Dying title switch narrator between each chapter. The next characteristic about uh, literature in 20th centuries is the novel of the city. The 20th century is distinguished as the century of urbanism. As more people move to the cities in Europe or and America, novelists use urban environment as a backdrop for the stories they told. Perhaps the best known of this is James Joyce. The Blinner's titles a series of short stories that all take place in various locales in Dublin. Other 20th century writers are also closely associated with the various urban centers. Wolfe and London, Theodore Dreiser and Chicago, Paul Auster and New York, and Michael Dutcher and Toronto. And then the last characteristic of the literature is writing from the margins. The 20th century gave voice marginalized people who previously got little recognition for their literary contribution. The Harlem Renaissance, for example, brought together African American living in the New York form, a powerful literary movement. Writers such as Langston Hughes, Neil Armstrong, and Zora Neale Hurston wrote a fiction and poetry that celebrate black identity. Similarly, female writers gained recognition through novels that chronicle their own experience. Finally, the post-colonial literary movement was born, with writers such as Chinua Achebe writing stories on behalf of subjugate people who had experienced colonization by Western power. Well, now I will give you the example of the the literature in 20th centuries period. Uh, the example is from the famous author Angela Carter in the 1940 until 1992 is one of the boldest and the most original writer of the 20th centuries. Her works draw on a eclectic range of themes and influences, from Gothic fantasy traditional fairy tales, Shakespeare's and music hall, to surrealism and the cinema of Godard and Fellini. Carter's works break many long-established taboos and more, not least in her forthright realigning of women as a central to and in control of their own narratives. Her perfectively crafted stories are often provocative and subversive, and many contain graphic and violence content. Her novel Night at Circus that you see on the slide, it is won the James Tite Blake Memorial Prize, and in the 20 in the 2012 was declared the best book to have ever been awarded the prize. And also, her last novel, Wise Children, in the 1991, tells the story of twin girls, Dora and Nora Chance, and their bizarre family, bringing together high and low culture with the element of music hall and Shakespeare's. So she was born, uh, sorry, Angela Carter was born uh, with the name Angela Olive Stalken in 1940 in Esbon. She has a journalist father, and then Alexander Stalker was the mother. This is the best author in that era. So what I learned from this 20th century's literature, um, a lot of information that I got from this uh, history of English literature, but mostly this period of the begin of modernism. So during this period, society at every level underwent profound change, where an industrialization seemed to default the individual. Global communication made the world a smaller place. The pace of change was dizzying. Writers responded to this new world in a variety of ways. The 20th centuries broke with the mission of the Victorian novel, which is storytelling and entertainment, and the radio focus on the character to unreveal the intricate web of truth, of thought, and feeling that active the individual. Many novels were mainly concerned with the propaganda and social issue. Only in the 20th centuries, the novel was impacted by the work of some prominent 19th century writers such as Russian Fyodor Dostoevsky and Leo Tolstoy, and the French novelists. So, uh, that's it, the information that I get, or the lesson learned I get. I hope you understand, because this is little bit confused when we're talking about this period, because in the 20th centuries itself, a lot of era inside this period. That's it for my presentation today. I hope you understand what I mean in this presentation. I hope you learned something from my presentation and from my explanation. uh, I would like to say sorry if I had a mistake on my presentation or I had misspelling that makes you confused when you learn from my presentation. Thank you so much and see you.